Good evening, gentlemen. It is 7 p.m. Tuesday evening, and it's me, Twana. Welcome to Hang In with the Fellas. So glad you guys are here. So, listen, we had an amazing experience this week. A couple of you decided that you were going to send some pretty dynamic comments onto the site, and so we were really thankful for that. But in this comment, it created something that made me want to send you guys kind of a message to let you know exactly how to respond to something like this. And so it gave us more information for things that we can actually talk about in today's episode as we continue our discussion about finding the right one. So far, we've talked about how finding the right one really involves you being willing to do the internal work necessary to allow yourself to grow into that place where you're ready for that lifelong committed marriage where you can find the right woman and the things that you need. And so, as always, this is going to be one of those hard hitting ones. And so, for those of you who tend to be a little more sensitive, you might want to find somebody who's a little less dainty in how they communicate things. My job is to give you the truth. And so that's what we're going to do today. So the question or the statement was made, listen, it used to be that people got married younger and the wife would help the husband build, but that's not the way that it is today. Today, women are taught to um, go after the men that they already need to be set up and then that they should be entitled to have. Well, that's an interesting statement. Because you see, last week we just talked about the Proverbs 31 woman and how she has her own. So let me understand this. If a woman already has her own, why would she want yours? If you just said she's greedy, then it's because you're looking at worldly women and trying to turn them into godly ones. Quit doing that. The two women will never ever have a great conversation at a party. They will not get along, not even a little bit. The godly woman will look at the worldly woman in that mentality and be repulsed by it. You're not going to have two people be able to come together. Not all women are created equal. And so I really wanted to bring to your attention something that really was internal or um, inadvertently written within the comment. And see, when we deal with worldly things, we often answer our own statement, right? Like you weren't even posing a question, but the statement made shows that really you're not looking at this from the godly perspective. You're not coming at this from a godly mindset. You're coming at it from a worldly mindset. And so I want to talk to you about something because this is the hardest part. And this is what separates the men from the boys. There's nothing easy by the world's definition when it comes to walking with the Father. Because when you walk with the Father, you have to deny what it is that you want. So you may want to leave that person, the wife, the children, all of that. And God says, Mm-mm-mm. We leave the one or we leave the 99 and go back for the one. That's contrary to how the world thinks. And so, one of the big things that happens, one of the reasons I'm always telling you, just because I profess to be a Christian, just because I profess to be a believer in Christ, doesn't actually mean that I am. Because there's a huge responsibility that goes along with that walk. And so, I want to take you to Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Because if you're not allowing God to give you a new mind every day, you got a problem. And 12:2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. You see, you can't keep sitting back and doing whatever you want to do and then say, I believe in Jesus. And listen, the excuse of, well, all men fall short of the glory of God. And save that for Oprah because When you keep doing the same thing over and over again, now you're dealing with a reprobate mind. Now you're dealing with someone who's lost and who God is not going to be able to continue to use. He will not use you if you always show that you're arrogant and that you're unwilling to make changes, that you're unwilling to learn, that you're unwilling to be educated. He stops touching you then because he can't trust you. You're on again and off again. One minute you're going to take care of his children, and the next minute you're going to cuss him out. You're going to say something that doesn't make sense. And see, we like to play games with God, and we got to get to a place where we quit doing that. So he told you that you have to renew your mind. And we don't renew our mind once a year. We renew our mind every day. And in the beginning, this is a hard thing, right? But the more you do anything, it becomes second nature. How many of you struggle to tie your shoe? Excuse me. How many of you struggle to tie your shoe in this day and age? Have you not tied your shoe enough now that you just know how to do it? Do you even have to think about it? Well, that's what happens with the things of God. The more you do them, the more comfortable you become with them. I want to bring something to you because the Bible talks about the two types of women. Last week, we discussed the Proverbs 31 woman. And so, if you haven't seen that video, we're going to put a link to it right up here in one of these corners. You'll be able to find it. Okay. You can click on that and go back and see exactly what we were talking about and what we were laying about what the Proverbs 31 woman looks like. But he also was gracious enough to show you what women who are not of him look like. And so I'm going to take you right now into Judges chapter 14, verses 15 through 20. And this is Samson, because if anybody is a perfect example of how he let not so great for him women run his life, there's no one better than Samson. And it came to pass on the seventh day that they said unto Samson's wife, entice thy husband, that he may declare unto us the riddle, lest we burn thee and thy father's house with fire. Have ye called us to take that we have? Is it not so? And Samson's wife wept before him and said, thou dost but hate me and lovest me not. Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people and haven't even told me what it is. And he said unto her, behold, I have not told it my father nor my mother. And shall I tell it thee? That's not, of course, how they spoke, but for the King James. And she wept before him the 7 days while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the seventh day that he told her, because she lay sore upon him. And she told him, and she told the riddle to the children of her people. And the men of the city said unto him on the seventh day, before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, if ye had not plowed with my heifer, ye had not found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and slew 30 men of them, and took their spoil, and gave change of garments unto them which expounded the riddle. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he used as his friend. So, I really shouldn't have to explain this to you, but let's do this. Her crying on her husband is manipulation. It's 100% unadulterated manipulation. How dare you not trust me? How dare you this? You see, had she been the Proverbs 31 woman, the Proverbs 31 woman would have gone home to her husband and said, "Let me tell you what happened." And she would have left it alone and let him go deal with it as he saw appropriate. They said they were going to burn down my father's house with him in it if I don't tell them the answer to your riddle. Samson was the strongest man on the planet at that time. And instead of going to him so he can protect you, you go to him with manipulation so you can give the answer to your people. He already told her that he had told no one that answer. So did she think that he wasn't going to know it was her who told him? You see, that's the problem with women who are ungodly. They play the games. You see, the godly women don't waste their time because when I play games with you as my spouse, then guess what? We don't go anywhere. We don't build anything. Nothing we do is sustainable. And it's the same if you, as the husband, constantly play games instead of just being honest and straightforward with your wife. When you always got something going on, when you always trifling and shifting and shucking and jiving and doing all that craziness, you ain't building nothing with nobody, not even by yourself, because you're too busy lying. And we've already talked about those lies and what they do. And so that's what she did. She lied and she attempted to manipulate him. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Samson was married twice. This woman that we just read about was his first wife, but it was not a different story with Delilah. You see, there's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes tells us that. And so, what we know is this: when we have something that we do on a regular basis, if it works, we keep doing it. We're not that creative. Least of all, those who work in manipulation and the areas of evil. When they work to hurt people, there's nothing new that they do. They don't find anything different. They don't do anything different. And when you understand that, then what you start doing is you start realizing that there are certain women, like those who say, a man has to be uh, a baller and he has to have pockets filled with money and da 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 da. Oh, okay. And what do you do for a living? I'm a waitress. You got pockets full of money? Am I? I bet you are. Have a wonderful evening. And you walk away. What more is there to talk about? She told you who she was. Believe her. Walk away. No, don't sit back and go, "Oh, okay, well, I'll just sleep with her." Okay. So then when you have syphilis, gonorrhea, something that's not curable, now what? These are things that you have to think about when you play these games with people. Because the same thing that you're doing when you decide, "Oh, well, I would never date her," when you decide you're going to sleep with her, you're you're Samson playing with women who were not for him and who were never ever going to be for him. So now you put yourself in harm's way. The values between a woman who is godly, the conversation type between a godly woman and or a Proverbs 31 woman and one of the world is going to be very different. It was funny. I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he was telling me about this girl that he met, and he thought she was attractive, and she thought he was attractive, and he bought her a drink, and she said to him, "Oh, well, if something's gonna happen, you gonna have to do me up the rear because I have a boyfriend." What? Okay, that wasn't quite the conversation I expected to have, but that's what I'm sharing with you. That's the difference between what Proverbs 31 women talk about and what worldly women talk about. There's going to be differences. Now, is it gonna be easy to find a godly woman? Mm-mm, 'cause she's usually busy. She's off doing her own thing. She's building, she's moving forward, she's going and doing things, which means this: you have to be out and about doing something. You have to be out and about your father's business in order to meet her. If you're not, then don't cry when you keep getting the wrong type of women. If you want the right woman, you have to be in the process of becoming the man who can handle that type of woman, because it is not going to be something that just is easy. You're not going to get to come back home at the end of a day and go, "Oh, I'm tired," and sit on the couch all night and think that that relationship, that marriage is going to last. It's not. And biblically, she doesn't have to stay because you're not providing for what she needs. It's not just about money. A lazy man is not a man worth having. And you've got to really think about if that's how you want to be classified. So, the Proverbs 31 woman would have told Samson what happened and left him to handle it. I know I already said that, but I really want to drive that home. Let's look at something else that the Bible says. We're going to take a quick dash into Proverbs. We're going to start in chapter 5, verses 3 through 4. For the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Exactly what I just shared with you is what the Bible told you. You see, Samson's first wife poured on all the honey and oil. Oh, if you loved me, you would tell me. Oh, you don't love me, so this is why you would leave me in the dark this way. But her end was bitter, because what happened when he went back for his wife, she was already married off to another man. Let's not even get into the logistics of how that happened, all right? The point is, she wasn't going to stay around to see the damage, because when they do you that harm, they never expect you to stay anyway. Doesn't matter if it's a male or a female. When they do you wrong, they expect you to go. Usually that's why they do you wrong. So let's look at the next verse of Proverbs, which is number 5. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. This is important, because what this is saying is that there's nothing good that comes from this type of woman. A woman who sits back and wants to talk about how she's going to take half of yours, she is already telling you, I am only going to be married to you long enough that I can take half of what you have and go live on my own. Let's translate what that means. She's not planning on something long term. She's not planning on us being able to move forward and be successful together and grow together. She ain't trying to grow with you, baby. She is all about what you can do for her. And if you don't understand that, then you're missing what the Bible is telling you. Her feet go down to death. That means nothing good is going to come from anything that this woman does. She's not bringing anything to the table that you want to keep. Her steps take a hold on hell. That means where she goes comes chaos and mess and darkness and all the things that are going to ultimately steal your peace. And that's who she is. So to reiterate, when she talks about how you got to already have, but she ain't coming to the table with nothing, she's already told you who she is. What more conversation or interaction is necessary? Let's go to number 6. 6 will be up in just a second, gentlemen. So let's go to Proverbs 6. We'll just take it right out of the Bible itself. It's Proverbs chapter 5, verse 6. And it says, "Lest thou should ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them." You will not know anything about her. You can't know who she is because she won't open herself up to allow you to know who she is. So now you're playing with a woman who ultimately is going to bring you nothing but destruction. So when you look at this, and again, you're looking at these women who are like, you need to come to the table with something. Mm-mm, baby, if you don't come to the table with something, we don't have anything to talk about, because you can't come after what I have built and think that you're going to be allowed to come in and tear it down. Because the difference between the Proverbs 31 woman and the worldly woman is always going to be their willingness to build with you, to help you get to that next level, and for you to help them get to the next level. Let's be honest, because we don't like to talk about this. The fact of the matter is that men and women need each other. And when you sit in the world that's filled with all these different processes of, oh, we don't need each other, women are better, men are better, stay out of that nonsense, because that's what it is. It's nonsense. The two genders need one another. Women are made better by men and men are made better by women. And those are just the way that we were designed. There's no changing how we were designed. So let's go to Revelations. Before we do that, let me talk to you about this. Here's where the key comes in. Here's where the big struggle comes in. Premarital sex is off limits, and that's where we start to have problems. We ain't trying to hear that. But let's look at something. Revelations chapter 3, verse 15 through 16. I know thy works, that thou art neither hot nor cold. I would that you were hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, you're neither hot nor cold, I'll spew you out of my mouth. That means God doesn't want anything to do with you when you are sitting back and you won't choose a side. You see, lukewarm is when we want to straddle that fence. There are some things that we want of God, but then there are other things, we ain't trying to have that. So what it is we try to look at the Bible, we try to look at the Father as a smorgasbord. I'm gonna take this part because I want this part, but I'm gonna leave this part because I ain't trying to hear that part, right? And that's what we do. And so when we believe that the Bible is a buffet that we walk up to and we take a little bit of this and we take a little bit of that and we take a little bit of this, then what happens is we create our own religion. And when we create our own religion, we start to stumble, we start to fall. We start to not have success. We start to see things fall apart and become destructive. We start finding women who are not designed for us. And then we sit back and go, well, I don't understand what we're supposed to do. You see, remember, not every woman who claims to be a Christian and not every man who claims to be a Christian truly is. The evidence of that comes in their walk. And so, one of the reasons that God has always told us why we should not have sex before marriage is actually really fascinating. You see, physical beauty is what the world teaches us that we have to look at. We're trained to focus on a person's beauty. But let's really look at the impacts that sex has on genders, because we never think about it. How many times have you actually sat back and thought, how has me having sex impacted me? And we don't often think about this. So let's start with the gentleman. Sex will always change a way the man sees the world. And I'm not talking about whether or not he deems it to be great sex or not great sex. I'm talking about just the act, the physical act. If the gentleman has a love for the woman and then they consummate that relationship, it impacts completely how he sees the world. The world can become either a great place or a miserable place based off of what happens in that sexual interaction. So let's look at the not so great side. It's technically the negatives, but we called it something else for this. A bad experience leaves a man feeling like women are evil or bad. That's what it does. People as a whole become terrible. They believe that life is awful. They believe that everyone is out to get them. Everything in their life is a scam. They're unwilling to learn anything and they become less giving. That's what happens when men have a negative experience. But when they have a positive experience, they become filled with possibilities. The world is a great place. They become adventurous. They're excited to try new things. They change in their expectations of what is going to happen in a given situation. These are all things that happen when men have a positive experience. So, what does this mean? Let's break it down a little more. A negative experience is when, after consummating a relationship, the woman walks away, she leaves, she says something terrible, she leaves him with a scar, or she breaks his heart. That's what the negative experience is. But the positive consummating experience that a man has changes exponentially his view of the world, his excitement about the world, about what can be done, and how he can build. Now, let's look at females because females have a completely different experience when we start talking about consummating relationships. The process of consummating changes the way a female sees herself. It's fascinating. There's something about that action. Women are designed to respond to that in ways that actually reflect on who they are as people. It's very fascinating. I absolutely love it. So here's what happens when a woman has an experience with a man that leaves her with a scar. It becomes harder for her to see herself as attractive and desirable. She dresses in less appropriate attire because she just sees herself as something to be used and abused. She believes she lives her life kinda hiding and fearful. That means she won't get out and try new things. She's withdrawn, and she can be extremely extroverted. She can be extremely outgoing and look like she has all this fun, but really what you have is a girl who's hiding and doesn't wanna be seen. And so she'll stand behind a man who's not worthy of her and try and push him forward so that she doesn't have to take the steps of potentially failing if she goes and potentially failing if she goes out and tries something herself. Lastly, she waits for unworthy people to see her value. And so what you will find is that this woman is not always very well put together. She doesn't really carry herself in that weight oftentimes. She has weight issues, other health issues, things like that. It's amazing what happens when they have these negative experiences. But on the other side of that, a woman who has a wonderful experience with a man and refrains from engaging and consummating that relationship early believes that she is stunning and she carries herself appropriately. The manner in which she dresses tends to be sexier yet conservative. So she understands that she can dress and not have to show cleavage and not have to show these different things. And while you look at her across the room, you're like, is it time to go home yet? I can't wait to to just spend time with my wife. She trusts the world more. She takes more chances. Value becomes internal and she becomes more giving. This is why God told us to wait until marriage for us to consummate relationships because the impact that it has on who we are as people is tremendous and far reaching. and its impact is very different. Now, here's the thing I want to leave you with today: men were designed to lead the world. It's not un it's not surprising that that interaction changes how you see the world. Whether it is a good place or a bad place is based off of the relationship oftentimes that you have with a female. And there are many men who will say, "That's not true." Okay, yeah. That means you're dealing with a man who's had a bad experience with a woman or no experience with a woman. Women become these people who want to help you grow. The more connected a woman feels to you, the more she wants to do for you. The less connected she feels from you, the less attachment she has to doing things for you. It's not that she won't do something for you, it's just that she doesn't feel anything as a result of what she's doing. Women do tend to feel more, men do tend to think more. So women feel, men think. And that's the difference. And when you bring those two together in a happy harmony, it becomes explosive and their growth is unstoppable. When you have one broken and one godly, everything crashes and burns because there's always one side who can't carry their weight, or both sides can't carry their weight. The two of them can't come in harmony. And for that, we would have to go to Amos 3:3, where God tells us, can two walk together lest they be agreed? If we're not agreed, we can't walk together. If a couple is not fit for one another, they can't walk together. Understanding the difference between the Proverbs 31 woman and the worldly woman will make a huge difference in how you experience women. So, how do you find godly women? Be out in the places that they are. Be out in the mission fields, be traveling around, be paying close attention to people who are doing things and focused on other people and not focused on themselves. They often are happier people overall. They tend to be more morning people. It's actually really interesting. But the more godly a woman is, the more she's a morning person. She's up early, she goes to bed late. These are the things that you wanna look for because these are the women that you ultimately want to create a life with. Now, if the conversation of, "I have this and you have that," if she even says, "We need to sign a prenup," listen, in this day and age, I don't blame him and I don't blame her, because what you're dealing with is a world so filled with manipulation and so filled with people who don't know better. I understand why people oftentimes want to do that, but that doesn't mean that there's not still love, because that manipulation can be there. I'm sorry, that prenup can be there, but in the end, you two can sit back and decide if you end up in a position where you're going separate ways, although I'm not sure why you would, how you wanna break it off. Usually when those kind of things happen, it ends up being a situation where they're like, no, I don't wanna leave. I'm good. I lost my mind for a minute, but now I'm fine." So, on that happy note, it was awesome spending time with you guys tonight. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 7 PM, and I hope you have a wonderful week.